Hello folks, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about the Canon C50. But before that, this video is just coming a bit later compared to all the other people posting it, just because I needed to breathe. Because last week was probably the craziest week in a while that I have ever been into, because we received a ton of releases of new amazing cameras like the C50, which we will talk about in a minute, the ZR, the Nikon ZR, which is I think one of the most interesting and at the same time underwhelming camera that I've ever seen, but we will talk about that in another video. We received the Fuji Eterna, which I'm not 100% sure if I'm actually gonna talk about it. And then I think that's it. Well, except DJI announcing basically next week we are going to receive the Mini Pro drone with a most probably 1-inch sensor, which is the 1-inch sensor from the Pocket 3. But that will be in a future video if I will feel like it. But now let's get into this C50 talk, because of course I'm not one of the lucky ones to receive it. I'm pretty small channel at the moment still, but I have the knowledge of cameras, and I'm gonna talk about how I feel when I was looking at the reviews and all the things that I felt while we were watching the review, right? So basically a lot of people like Peter McKinnon and many of his peers basically call this camera as the FX3 killer. And I previously released a video where I was talking about this camera not being an FX3 killer. And I stand on that because there are a couple of things that I still think that this camera lacks to actually be an FX3 killer. And the second thing is, I don't think there is ever going to be an FX3 killer, because obviously you are going to put a better camera out than a camera that is 5 years older, right? Like, if you are not able as a company to build a camera that is in the same form factor than a camera that was built 5 years ago and managed to completely outstand it, then what are you doing, right? So even all of these people calling, oh, this camera is the FX3 killer, and even us standing here and talking still about a camera that is 5 years old, and I'm talking as a not Sony user, as a not Sony fanboy, because the only camera that I will freaking love to own on Sony list is the FX6. The rest, I don't even care about the rest. Okay, and that is the most interesting part, because this camera is 5 years old and we are still sitting here comparing the newest cameras to it, and that makes you understand how legendary that camera is. And that's why Sony is not even sweating it. Like, Sony will probably put the FX3 Mark II beginning of next year out, which it will blow all of these cameras away. Or not. Sony will do one of the things or not. We don't know. But that is how good that camera was. So let's get straight into this video and talk about the features, so the pro and cons, so the things that I like about the C50 and the things that I didn't really love about the 650, right? Because there are a couple. So the Z50 comes in with a 7K open gate up to 25 or 30 frames per second depending on which part of the world are you. Then it has 7K 16:9 up to 60 frames per second. It has Canon RAW light. It has proper monitoring tools like fuzz color and waveforms. Those are the things that I pretty much love about this camera. And those are specifically the things that the FX3 doesn't have, right? So now let's talk about the cons. The cons is for them not getting this camera in Gerald and Don's hands. This for me is one of the oddest move that a camera company can do, because Gerald and Don can give you a really nitpicking, like really nitpicking things that many times I feel a company don't want you to know, so they just don't send it to Gerald and Don. But I'm pretty sure Gerald and Don will put his own video out there pretty soon when the camera will be out, because he will probably rent it or borrow it from one of his collaborators, as he has done in the past with, I believe, the R5C, because I think he didn't get it to review it, but then later on he rented it, or to a collaboration he got it from one source or whatever. I think it was B&H or something like that. And the other con is the mount, the RF mount. The mount is still closed. So basically, to full frame third-party production or manufacturers lenses, the mount is still closed. At the moment, they are still producing, this moment Sigma is still producing only APS-C lenses, since Canon is lacking a lot on that part with the, the R7 lineup and the R50 lineup and all of that. So that's where basically Sigma is covering for them. The next thing is IBIS. Okay, people, stay connected with me a second, because we are sitting here and saying, oh, it's a cinema camera. Cinema cameras usually don't have IBIS, blah, 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 blah. The FX3 is a cinema camera, right? And as for now, it has been the best for the past 5 years. And that camera had IBIS. Just saying. The best cinema camera that has been around for 5 years has IBIS. And now we are sitting here and creating excuses on this cinema camera with a smaller form body, which is meant to be that you don't want to rig it up, because you just want a smaller form body to just run around and shoot, right? So it's not meant to be rigged up and make it heavier, so you will come by with the jitters and stuff. And let's just remember that IBIS can always be turned off if you're doing some jobs where you don't require it. So let's just remember that, and let's just be sincere sometimes and not be too much bias, create too much biases and excuses, because this camera was meant to have an IBIS. It's a form factor, smaller form factor, which it's even better with IBIS than electronic stabilization. But just saying, I'm just leaving it there. 4K 120 or 4K 100, depending on where you are, cropped. FX3 killer, but it has a 4K 120 cropped. I'm leaving it there. There is no slow motion in any of the open gate forms. Okay, so what they could have actually done is, like Lumix for example did, is just basically give a lower resolution, or basically upscaling it to 7K, so I don't know, 6K, 5K, whatever resolution you can go down with, that will basically help you to have still kind of the higher readout, but you can still do 6K, right? Because you can do in 16:9 60p. That means you can still, by down scaling and upscaling later on, still have a slow motion. But as for now, you don't have it. But Lumix does. The S12 does 5.1 upscale to 6K, 60, open gate, ready for you to shoot and have fun. So FX3 killer, yeah, because FX3 doesn't have an open gate, but it has 5 years, 5 years older, but it doesn't have open gate. So in that realm, I will give it to Canon, but you're still lacking behind on some of the other competition, right? And then no support for anamorphic lenses. Those are basically the things that caught me a little bit off guard, and I just wanted to talk about. That's why I still feel that this camera, it's an amazing, it is an amazing product. Like, if I was still a Canon shooter, this camera would have been for sure on my list, because it's an amazing and a fantastic camera. But FX3 killer, no, like, I don't think it has so many more features that will make you call this FX3 killer, right? I don't know, like, what will be the features that this camera has that are so mind-blowing that will make you switch away from the FX3? The 7K open gate, the 4K 120 cropped, the no IBIS, in a smaller form factor cinema camera body. I don't know, because if people still until this moment, for the 5 years of time, like, there is no cinematographer that owns their own gear that I know that doesn't have the FX3. Yeah, like, I'm based in Finland, and if you ask any cinematographer here what camera they own, either FX6 or either FX3. That's it. So if they made it work until now without open gate, I'm pretty sure they're going to survive without having a 7K open gate or proper monitoring tools, which I believe Sony actually, which is the weirdest thing ever, they released the proper monitoring tools in their phone app, or which is called Monitor Plus, I believe, but not into the camera. These are some of the quirks that sometimes I don't understand of Sony, but they still have it, not in camera, but externally. And the RAW, right? The RAW part, Sony still delivers the highest bit rate with RED. So RED has the highest bit rate until now in, let's say, the consumer base, because I'm not going to touch ARRI and that part of the realm because they're a totally different league. But RED has the 16-bit RAW, and Sony externally has it too. The difference between RED and Sony is that RED does it internally, and we will talk about the ZR later in another video. RED does it internally, so they are able to actually deliver the 16-bit, while Sony delivers it externally, but they are not able to release that 16-bit because there is no monitor that is able to actually record 16-bit as for now, right? Because Atomos don't do it and Blackmagic don't do it. So you have it, but you're not able to use it yet. But it's a really good future proofing, because there might be, I don't know, the next Atomos project or the next Atomos monitor will be able to do so. But hey, this was my 2 cents about this conversation about the C50 not being an FX3 killer. And share down below what your thoughts are. I'm not hating on the C50. Yes, I believe it's an amazing product. But for me, words have a huge importance, which in this day and age, words are just air, right? So I actually still want to see when this camera will get out there in people's hand to actually see how it really is, because as for now we're just basing all these talks on creators receiving the camera from Canon, right? So we know biases and stuff, so let's see when people will get it in their hands what will actually be. But you, what's your thought on what I said? And let's just have a chat down below. Just remember, if you don't have any constructive criticism, just pass by, right? Let's just not waste people's time by commenting nonsense down below. Yeah, okay, take good care of yourself. Hope you're taking care of yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. I'm gonna talk to you in the next one. See you